All right, we will try this again. And I apologize, but I'm going to have to go through this again, and maybe you can pick up some stuff, maybe not. All right, if you would close that door so we don't get any from there. Let's see if I can run through this again. You poor folks. Lab safety. What to do when you are finished with working with lab supplies and materials. A very good thing for you to do is wash your hands thoroughly. You need to do that. Proper attire and clothing in the lab. You don't want to wear jangly jewelry. You don't want to wear loose things. Your hair, if it's long, you need to tie that back. So be careful with what you wear. Don't wear good clothes. Wear your older clothes while you're here. What do you do if you get acid on your skin? The best thing to do is to rinse that out with a bunch of water. Don't use soap. Don't use oil. Don't mix it with other things. Try to rinse it off your skin with water. Precautions you should take when working with open flames. You need to keep flammable stuff away from it. So alcohol, that's one of the things we use in here a little bit. Be careful when you're working with things that are flammable around open flames. Unused lab chemicals, do not put those back in the original containers. That can contaminate the whole container of stuff. Simply leave it at your table or dispose of it as we tell you to. History of science, the characteristics of the Greek culture. The Greeks focused on nature and reason to answer questions, and that's how they did that. They did not focus on paranormal. Plato did a little bit, but they focused primarily on evidence. What can you see with your senses and experience with your senses to arrive at the truth? The Greeks and the Romans were different. The Romans, they were into violence, power, and sex. That's the big things that ran their society. The Greeks were more into knowledge, what is the truth, beauty. They developed the Olympic Games. The Romans turned that into gladiator blood sports, and that was a difference in them. The Romans also established the Roman Catholic Church, and the church at one point in time had all the power after the Roman government fell. After all that happened, we go into a dark ages, and we don't really know what was going on because there are very few records. Nobody was writing at that time, and it was hard to determine what people were doing. But then we had the Italian Renaissance. In the Italian Renaissance, the Medici family has money, and they pay some of the greatest artists to ever live to paint things and produce things. One of them was Leonardo da Vinci. Da Vinci paints the Mona Lisa, paints the Last Supper, comes up with some of them are military inventions and machinery. Michelangelo does the Statue of David. So all this happens because we focus on humanity and not the afterlife. So that was a shift. Nicholas Copernicus he's an astronomer. He discovers through the path of the planets that the solar system, the Earth isn't the center of it as thought. The sun is. This is called the heliocentric theory. He could not prove his thoughts or his theory because the travel of the planets is elliptical, not circular, and calculus is not discovered until after his death. He did not allow them to publish his findings until he was gone because he was afraid the church would persecute him. Strengths of the Royal Societies and Laboratories. In Europe, the Royal Societies started getting all these great minds together, and when they got them together, they developed and made big-time advancements in science because when great minds work together, they tend to come up with great ideas. We then get into tabula rasa. John Locke said that you are born as an infant with a tabula rasa, meaning a blank slate for the mind. This is influential, especially in government, because a group of people called George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin, they produce a new form of government called the Democratic Republic, and that's what we use today in America. The people are not born into leadership based on their experience because of tabula rasa. Those with the best experiences are those who should lead, and that is very different. The advancements during the Civil War, which was around the 1850s, we are fighting a civil war over slavery, and in Europe they are coming up with the structure of the atom. They find out about the atom. That continues into the development of radioactivity, and radioactivity comes into nuclear power. Einstein is the founder of these things, many of them, especially relativity. Einstein was Jewish. He was from Germany. This is during the time of World War I and then World War II. Hitler and the Nazi Party come to power. Einstein flees Germany because he is persecuting the Jews, and Einstein's research leads to the development of the atomic bomb. He talks with the president. The president appoints the Manhattan Project, led by a guy named Oppenheimer. They develop the first atomic bomb. Hitler also has a guy working on it, Heisenberg. Heisenberg is not as far along. He fails. Ours is successful. We use it on Japan to end World War II, and that is a huge, huge example of how science and government and religion are all closely tied together. Watson and Crick's discovery, they work on the structure of nucleic acids, and they come up with the DNA double helix model. That is the foundation. Every living thing is made from DNA. Gates and Jobs, they are huge in scientific inquiry because we can now, through the personal computer and the cell phone, share information and communicate virtually instantly. And that changes the way information is shared and how scientific research is done. A hypothesis is an idea that you think is true. A hypothesis is not necessarily true. It has to be tested. Hypothesis testing has to have data. If you can't produce data, it cannot be a scientific hypothesis. Your hypothesis, what you think is happening, is the null hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis is exactly opposite from the null. They are not the same. They don't complement each other. They are adversarial. Your study will either confirm the null hypothesis or it will confirm the alternative hypothesis. There are two types of errors in testing. Type 1 is when you take a true hypothesis and reject it. You don't accept the findings of it. You think they are false, but they're actually true. In type 2 testing, there is a false hypothesis and you accept it as true. Most errors are type 2 errors. An independent variable is the one that stands alone. In a good scientific study, there is only one independent variable. Constants are run between a control group that you don't do anything to and the experimental group which you are applying a treatment to. Constants are things in both of them that are the same. They don't change. A dependent variable is what you collect your data on. It changes based on what you're doing in the experimental study. How many independent variables are in a good study? One. Quantitative studies are numbers. It produces data in number form. We're going to start studying that next week. Qualitative studies are what we did this week. We worked on the JFK assassination and we looked at facts and testimony primarily from people. The quantitative part is the study of the bullets and trajectories and all that good stuff related to the assassination. Mixed studies use both of these. The Pygmalion effect is, it is done with human study. If you tell someone they are good and they're doing well, they tend to do better than someone you do not have expectations for and you don't think are doing as well. Placebos. Placebos are fake treatments that people think are the real treatment. Instead of giving someone medication during a study, you will give them a sugar pill. Experimental control groups are ones that you do not do anything to. You apply no treatment to them. You then, on your experimental group, you apply the treatment and then you compare them to see if there is a difference. When you're assigning subjects to this, people in the control group and the experimental group, you have to do this randomly. You can't place all the high achievers in one and low achievers in the other, or those that are healthy in one and those that are sick in another. You have to place them randomly. In a double-blind study, the people that are in the study do not know if they're getting the real treatment or the placebo or the control. And then the people in the experimental group don't know either. Also, double-blind means the people that are doing the experiment don't know which ones are getting the treatment. Claims, evidence, reasoning. A claim is what you think to be true or your answer to a question based on evidence. Evidence is fact. It's not, it comes primarily as fact. That's the strongest kind of evidence. You can have opinion and just observation, but that's not as strong as your facts. Reasoning is what you use to connect the claim and evidence together. Why you make the claim is based on the evidence. To do that, you have to use reasoning, which came from the Greeks. A teacher must provide for a good claim evidence activity. That is, we have to provide great questions. The arguability of a claim, it is arguable. For every answer, there's an opposite answer, and that would be an opposite or opposing claim. So claims are arguable. The strongest form of evidence is a fact. The weakest is just a statement or an opinion. And what the reasoning should do, we talked about it. It could get these two things together, the claim and the evidence. Doing real research and writing. These are the parts of a thesis writing. An introduction, the body paragraphs, the summary, conclusions, and references. Need to know what is in each one of those. The introduction always has the thesis statement. It's always in the introduction. The body paragraphs are all cited. That is not your thoughts. The only place your thoughts can be in a paper is the conclusion. The summary provides no new information and it is not cited. And all your sources are stored in the reference section. Minimum number of complete sentences is 3 in a paragraph. And then citing your sources, you use the last name and the year. And I sure hope this did, I think it's going to work this time. And that is it. We will have that test on Canvas, and away we go.